There's a lot going on in this movie.
It was like I was watching it for the first time.
I like this movie.
It has a special place in my heart.
Very close to my heart.
This was a good one.
I want to like this movie.
What? Seriously?
I loved it.
Very flat, kind of boring.
This movie blows me away. This movie turns me on.
Terrible. It is terrible. All these keys everywhere. Influences, baby.
Huge fan.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Hello out there in YouTube and podcast land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror movies and science fiction films and those key elements that lift and separate them from the average genre fare. I should say lift or separate them. Sometimes they're better, sometimes not, but they're definitely distinct. I am here today with my good friend David Horton. If you are joining us for the first time, then you know that David and I have been talking about movies and speculating sci-fi and horror since the caveman times. And because we are a couple of old cavemans. Those of you returning, well, and we're sharing those speculations with you. And those of you returning, well, you already know this, and that's why you're here. And you know where to find us in all the channels like YouTube or the podcast waves or Patreon or any of that stuff. Anyway, that's what we do. And we would like to welcome you. Merry Christmas. Hey, David, what's going on?
It is almost Christmas. Wow. I guess I need to start shopping now. What's going on? Normally we start, what's wrong with my voice? We normally start with
You're Peter Brady.
I was.
When it's time to change.
We normally try to start with a genre week. What have we done genre related? This was a good one for me because I got to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey on the big screen. We actually showed it at the Capitol, and so I got to experience it again on a big screen, which I hadn't done in decades easily. And it was so interesting to watch it again and watch it with an audience again. One guy came in and he said, "You know when the last time I saw this movie was?" I said, "When?" He said, 1968. I said, "Oh, so you saw it when it first came out?" And he goes, "Yeah, I was in the theater when it first came out. And this is my son and my wife, and they've never seen it." I said, "Okay, well, you guys will have fun." And it was really interesting talking to people as they left because that film is so unique. It is such a cinephile piece and so changed science fiction films forever after that. I think more so even than Star Wars did when it revolutionized. But some of the unique things about it that I had forgotten. So when we started the movie and we do our little pre-show thing and our trailers, and then the movie starts, there's 2.5 minutes of total black at the beginning of 2001. And it was great because it was just annoying enough so that last person is like looking up at the booth and everything and going, is something wrong? Is the projector out? I don't understand. And then suddenly it goes into also Spock Zarathustra and the moon appears and the monolith and everything. But anyway, so that was a good one. And then later on, there's actually an intermission. There's a 5-minute intermission in the middle of that movie, just out of the blue. It just says intermission. And they start playing.
I don't remember if it was that way when we covered it or not. I can't remember if they had an intermission on the streaming thing I watched.
There was not. No.
Okay.
No, because I definitely did not remember it at all.
But it's not that long a movie, is it?
No, it's 2 hours and 19 minutes.
Yeah, that's not bad. Usually intermissions are long movies.
Oh, yeah. Like every time we show Gone with the Wind has an intermission. So it's usually on longer pieces, but not. But I don't know why Stanley chose that. And I meant to look it up before we recorded this to find out why he chose to do that. Because it's right before the Jupiter and Beyond. So
the third act or whatever.
Yeah, essentially the hippy dippy trippy weatherman stuff.
Mm.
But it was so great seeing it. That is such a phenomenal film. It is so well made. It is so well crafted. The effects still hold up 55 years later. It still looks amazing. And that says a lot for a time before computers and before CGI and before all of the stuff that's happened since. Even motion control cameras, they didn't have those until the mid 70s. So a lot of the stuff he did was extremely revolutionary. So I got
Yeah,
to see a science fiction classic. That was my genre week.
on
What
the
about
big
you?
screen. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Wow. Well, it's funny. You went along the roads of Stanley Kubrick, and I went along the roads of another auteur, a foreign auteur
Ooh.
named Dario Argento. And I watched a
Oh,
movie called Panico, which is a
Panico.
documentary that was made with Dario Argento actually in it.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is really good. It's on Shutter right now. You get really good commentary from folks like Asia, his daughter, but even better stuff from people like Guillermo del Toro, who clearly is enamored with the man. It was directed by Simone Scafidi, if I'm saying that right, who has also done a Lucio Fulci documentary, which is also on Shutter, and I plan to watch that as well.
Okay.
Again, the contributors of this are great. Not only do you have Asia and Guillermo, but you have Michele Soavi, who directed Demons, and is also, I think, no, I'm sorry, he did not direct Demons. He directed the third one that was supposed to be part of the Demons trilogy. He was in Demons. He was the silver masked guy
Ah, okay.
at the beginning that was handing out the tickets. Anyway, Michele is a commentator on this and a director now. He wasn't the director of Demons. Lamberto Bava is also a commentator. He is the director of Demons. And there is actually a synopsis because it's not just commentary. This
Hmm.
is a film crew documenting Dario as he works on his latest script in a hotel room. He revisits the isolation where he dreamed up most of his iconic films, removed from distractions to explore his dark imagination. So you get a view into his process for what he is working on currently.
That's cool.
It is really cool. The hotel's really cool too. I mean, it's just an old Italian hotel. This movie gets 94% on Rotten Tomatoes with 18 reviews. I agree with that because I just love documentaries and learning about people and why
Hmm.
they make the films they do. I if you're a Dario Argento fan, you need to watch it. If you're not, you should probably watch it too because it'll give you an idea of what films you might want to see of his. So,
Mm,
so
okay.
that's what I did.
That's interesting. That's real. I often wonder about process. Of course, you know that. You know I'm obsessed with process, but
Mhm.
the I've always wanted to know what Cronenberg's process is because he's so like Argento. He's so avant-garde in how he approaches his storytelling and his visuals and what he does with it. And how where does that come from? Where do those images that process? So I would be very
I feel
curious
like
to
he
find
would be
out.
very meticulous. Like whereas I
Yeah.
think like with Carpenter it'd be the exact opposite. I think Carpenter would be a lot looser than Cronenberg, but that's
Well,
just
I
maybe
think
me projecting.
no, no, I could easily see that. I could totally agree with you that I think Carpenter would be uh, less than the other
Rigid.
two, than Argento or Cronenberg. But I guess a
Argento is
segue,
often compared to Hitchcock, and that's because of his shot structure and his lead ups and stuff. So that does take some choreography.
of course,
Yeah.
and planning and everything else. And that's a wait, but that helped me with the segue because both of them, Cronenberg not so much, but definitely Argento and Hitchcock are very good at dread and mood
Hmm.
and everything else. And that's what this movie, I think, achieves, but doesn't do it as well as some other examples of the same director because this one is directed by Jack Arnold. But we are going to talk about a science fiction, but mostly called a horror film called Tarantula today from 1955. And a brief synopsis before we jump into it. It is and I'm just reading this directly from the website. The film is about a scientist developing a miracle nutrient to feed a rapidly growing human population. It is in its unperfected state, however, the nutrient causes extraordinarily rapid growth, creating a deadly problem when a tarantula test subject escapes and continues to grow larger and larger. Pretty simple premise. It was definitely at the height of that bug-eyed monster, science fiction giant monster era in the 50s. It's pretty much a classic, I think. I think it's on a lot of people's lists of the best of the bug-eyed monsters, or in the top 5 or the top 3 of the bug-eyed monsters. Produced by William Alland and directed by Jack Arnold. Tim will go into casting when we talk about it. But do you remember the first time you saw it, and or what was your reaction this time?
I don't think I've ever seen this before.
What?
I don't.
Seriously?
If I have, I've only seen pieces. And the thing I remember most is Leo G. Carroll's face with the deformity. And
Yeah.
there were pictures of that in that pictorial history of horror book that I've mentioned a lot.
Oh, yeah. Great
on
makeup.
this.
Bud Westmore. Great makeup.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so I was watching this movie and I was like, I don't remember this. I don't remember this at all. And I disagree with you a little about it being classified as a horror movie. It is very science fiction because not
Oh, it
only do
is.
you have a giant monster, you've got like a mad scientist and all these weird experiments going on. I was like, wow, I would remember this. Usually a bug-eyed monster movie is like a natural occurrence or the result of nuclear testing with Godzilla. This is some guy that did it and it's escaped from his laboratory. So I was pretty impressed with it when I was watching it.
Good. That's great. I love that. I'm sure you were not as impressed as Deadly Mantis because it's better. But
no, I don't know. I kind of like this better.
I thought you would. I knew you would.
And I meant to mention before we continue that this is part 2 of our trilogy over Christmas of Universal horror movies. And I had no idea this was a Universal horror movie either, or a Universal sci-fi movie.
It gets short shift. It's not up there with Creature or any of the classic monsters. Although I was doing research to it, I did come across you remember the model kits that came out?
Aurora.
And they had all the Universal models, all the Auroras. They did not have a tarantula, but another company did.
Oh,
and it's
no, I didn't know that.
It sits up on a pod pedestal, but it's the one like from the poster and everything with all the legs splayed out and the big huge fangs in the front. Only two eyes.
Right. Well, I was going to say, because it usually looks like a real spider unless you get a close up and it's of that puppet. So
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So basically 3 stages in development. Effects. They did an actual spider that they then superimposed onto the film for that. They did a puppet for the close-ups of it, like coming in to bite people and stuff.
With 2 eyes. Yeah.
Right. And then they had a large fang puppet that they used for the attack on Leo G. Carroll, which I thought was pretty cool. But well, I'm glad that it's your first time, and I'm glad you liked it.
Like I said, if I've seen it, I did not remember it. I was like going, wow, there's a lot going on in this movie. There's a subplot. I was like, I didn't expect that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there's some really good performances in it. I think it's a really well crafted film. It's again Jack Arnold. What about, were there scenes that impressed you? I mean, one of mine, I agree with you, is I've always since I was a kid imprinted on we know the spider's coming toward the house. We've seen it out the window behind her, and it starts to attack. And Leo G. Carroll sits up in that bed, and you go, "Oh my God!" I mean, his eyes distorted. And his face is, it's such good makeup and so creepy.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
The scene that immediately comes to mind is the scene at the ranch with the horses.
Yes. Yeah.
They set it up earlier where they find skeletons of horses because obviously the spider can dissolve all the flesh off the skeletons when it's eating them, I guess. And it's dark. And you see the spider in the dark coming over the hill. You see the spider come over mountains a lot. They love the shot of it coming over and into frame. But the horses are all nervous and running around and with good caused because it's been eating them, and it literally comes down on one. And you're like, I mean, that was
Hmm.
pretty horrifying for 1955, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, cutting to that spider POV, I have
Yeah.
it in there too.
And the
That
horse
one
looking
gets
up.
that one gets me, and the one with the two guys around the campfire, and in the background, way off behind the mountain, you see it come up over the mountain,
Yeah.
and it's come, and you're going, dudes, it's a very Hitchcock feel to it. It's a get up,
Because
run, run, run.
mhm.
Yeah. I like the opening of this. I think that whole opening pre-credit scene with that, we don't know what the guy is doing, but he's staggering in the desert. And then it turns
Yes.
out he has a hump and his face is all
He's
distorted
all
and he ends
messed
up,
up too. He looks like
yeah.
he's like, I don't know, an alien, or he's been the victim of
Yeah.
something. Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
that's the opening, and we don't know what's going on or
Yeah,
why or
it's basically
whatever.
just
Yeah.
him stumbling into frame. That was going to be another one of my scenes as well. Yeah, for sure.
I love what I call the first laboratory scene, because Leo G. Carroll is so commonplace and so nice, and he gets his little syringe and writes on the formula, and it says 9 days or 6 days or whatever, and he goes and gives it to the rat, and then he goes over and he's just checking his clipboards and walking around, and we see the guinea pig behind
hmm
him in the cage, and then he
hmm
moves over and we see the something else, I forgot what it was, and then we see the tarantula, and it's already about the size of a table. I mean,
Yeah,
it's freaking big, and it's climbing on the
and
glass.
they use projection effects, so it's real. It's not a puppet. It looks
Right.
real. It's just
Yes.
projected into the screen to where it looks like it's behind glass. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. It's like rear projected in a glass cage behind him. And it is so good. And he's just like, da, da, da. Yeah, I know, I'm right behind me is a spider the size of a small truck, but that's okay. And I just go, oh boy, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't get the creepies with this spider in this. I mean, it does a little bit, but nothing like some of the newer movies that have come out and everything else that I'm like, no, I'm not going to
Not
watch
the
that.
ones
I'm
I'm
not going to
going to
watch.
make you watch.
Not going to watch a spider with a clown face. Not happening, dude. No. So, but and it's weird that I have that disconnect. Once it gets to a certain size, I'm like, okay, I can handle that. And I can handle the small ones. I used to have spiders. I do remember I had a personal story because my I called my spider Lola, and she was a rose tip tarantula, and kept her in like a terrarium. And Wynn was staying the night at the house one night, and Lola was really agitated. So she did that. She was up on the edge of the side with her her legs, and Wynn was going, I can't sleep on the couch in here, man, with that thing. I can't do it, man. I can't do it. I said, Wynn, she's not going to do anything. It's a spider, and she's in her cage and everything. So he goes, no, I'm going to go to sleep, and she is going to knock that cage over, and she's going to crawl, and I'm going to wake up with her on my face, and it's not going to be fun. I don't want it. He had a little bit of arachnophobia of
I
Lola,
don't blame him. I would too.
but yeah. And I think that's why they made this movie. I mean, I've got in my notes that an interview with Arnold where they said, why did you pick this particular script and everything else? He said, because there's a huge population that is very frightened of spiders. And
hmm
that's why we picked it.
Of
So,
course.
yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of which, you mentioned that Jack Arnold directed it. He
Hmm.
is moving up in our directors list. This makes number 4 that we've done of his. We've also
Yeah.
done This Island Earth, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and The Incredible Shrinking Man. I don't think he's credited with This Island Earth, but we've already established that he was brought on to fix that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can tell
Yeah.
Jack Arnold has such a distinctive style and mood in his direction, and it works. Uh,
Yeah, and he cast a lot of iconic television faces in his because he went
mhm.
on to direct television.
I mean, I do think that this one suffers a little bit more. I mean, for scares, I think the other one, which I don't think you've seen yet, I've mentioned it a few times in the years, but Monster on Campus
I've not.
is scarier, I think, than this movie, and has a much better resolution. This movie really doesn't have a great third act. Loses it at the very end. I think that's my
You need to
opinion.
put that other one on the list. I mean, it probably is. I mean, you just need to pick it.
Yeah, yeah. I often
Or
I
is it
was thinking
horror?
back. I was thinking back this season. I should have picked it instead of Monolith Monsters, because Monolith Monsters is dread and stuff all the way through, but not really attack or
Well, and
action or
this movie
anything.
looks like it was filmed in the same town.
Oh yeah. It definitely was.
Yeah.
It's the same backlot
Yeah.
that they filmed on. Yep. Uh,
Another background info I have as far as production is that it was the fourth biggest film at the U.S. box office in the year 1955. This movie made over $1 million. Back then, that was huge.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was well marketed, of course. It was a good time for it. The poster, which is the key for me, the poster is very Forbidden Planet-y, in my opinion, because it's something that doesn't happen in the movie at all, because it's the huge tarantula puppet with her in its fangs and it's carrying her. And that's like, that doesn't happen in the movie at all. Just like
No,
Robbie doesn't pick up the girl and terrorize her,
right. And it's
Uh,
also got an exclamation point like them.
Yes, yeah,
And
like
and when
them.
you look it up on IMDb, it doesn't have that exclamation point, whereas them, I believe, does.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And I do think
100%.
this is one of the first, I think, bug-eyed that didn't have to do with radiation. Although he uses an
Right.
isotope, but it's not like you said earlier. It's not a force of nature kind of we're messing with the atom and now we have to suffer. It's I'm actually trying to do good and experiment and get some production growth up for our expanding populations. And
That's
oops.
what I was going to ask you. Do you think he was really good? Because if you're going to do that, then why are you experimenting on animals instead of on food? Because he was
Well,
wanting to
because
grow more food or whatever, bigger food.
yeah, but I think he was wanting to grow stuff for carnivores. I mean, he was wanting to grow bigger pigs, bigger
I don't
horses,
eat
bigger.
spiders.
Well, which leads to the next one. Why would you do a spider? That makes
Right.
no logical sense. I mean,
No.
nobody's going to eat it, so why are
Mm-mm.
you doing it as a
I
food
don't think people are
source?
going to eat rats either, but he did rats
Right.
too.
Well, rats, you experiment on rats. That's what scientists
That makes more
do. And
sense. It does make
in
more
the
sense.
you test it on rats just because their structure is similar to ours. And then you go to, but why doesn't he have a giant baboon? Because then it'd be King Kong or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. We could make this into any movie we want.
That's right.
It's I
Yeah.
was thinking Food of the Gods with the rats, but
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right. Well, I can move on to casting unless you had other production
No. Yeah,
stuff.
that's cool.
I don't have a lot because, of course, these are, like I would say, B movie actors more than anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
John Agar is the lead. He plays Dr. Matt Hastings. Interesting note with him is that he was married to Shirley Temple and they had a kid. I didn't know that.
Really?
They divorced. In 1972, Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine reported that John Agar was dead, and apparently he lived long enough to autograph issues of that issue. So they were wrong. I thought that was really funny because how many times do you get those false death reports? We used to get them all the time.
I
After,
thought he was really, really good.
yeah,
I liked him in this role, and he went on to do a bunch of science fiction. I mean, he's in Mole People, and he's in one of the.
I was going to get to that.
So,
After Universal put him in Tarantula, Revenge of the Creature, which was also directed by
oh yeah,
Jack
that was it.
Arnold, and The
Hmm.
Mole People, he became disillusioned with the studio because his competition was Tony Curtis, Rock Hudson, George Nader, Jeff Chandler for leading roles, and he wasn't getting
Hmm.
them. He was getting B movies, so he got pissed.
That
But he
makes
did
sense.
continue working up until the late 20th century because he was a victim in Clive Barker's Nightbreed.
Really, I did
Yeah.
not know that. That's a cool trivia bit there.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, I did
Yeah,
too. And I'm sure Barker probably picked him because he knew who he was.
of
You know,
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mara Corday played Stephanie Clayton, also known as
Mhm.
Steve.
You call her Steve. Yep.
Yeah, she didn't do much after 1960. However, she was friends with Clint Eastwood, who is also in this movie, uncredited.
Yes.
Um,
Uncredited, but
so she did 4 of his movies later on, I guess as a favor, like she came back and would do movies with him down the road. The most prolific person probably in this movie is Leo G. Carroll, who we just
mhm.
mentioned, plays the mad scientist, Professor Gerald Deemer. And I mean, he's not a stereotypical mad scientist, but I think you could still classify him as a mad scientist. He is a great character actor. Alfred Hitchcock loved him. He was in 6 Alfred Hitchcock movies, including Spellbound, Suspicion, Strangers on a Train, North by Northwest, Rebecca, and The Paradine Case. More than
Mhm.
any other actor than except for Hitchcock himself, who made cameos. He steadily worked, Leo G. Carroll, that is, until 1972 when he died at the age of 85. But
Mhm.
I don't know if you knew this, and you'll probably appreciate this, is that he was a theatrical actor and he did over 300 plays in his career and preferred stage to film, even though he had all these film credits.
Well,
So,
film credits gave you the money so
right.
that you could, and that's
So that
still
you could do
present.
the
That's
stage.
still prevalent now. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
see so many actors that have a big hit and everything else, and you don't see them for like 3 or 4 years, and you realize they've been doing theater that entire time.
Well, or you see these
Um,
shows that are now taped in New York, like 30 Rock or Murders in the Building, and they
mhm.
have cast members that are actually stage actors because they're filming in New York. Yeah, that
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Nestor Paiva, if I'm pronouncing that right, Paiva, was Sheriff
Hmm.
Jack Andrews. He was also in
Hmm.
Creature from the Black Lagoon as Captain Lucas and
Yep.
Revenge of the Creature, both Jack Arnold movies. So Jack Arnold, like Nestor. Ross Elliott was Joe Birch. He was also in The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, another big monster movie. Hank Patterson, Josh, Edwin Rand, Lieutenant Nolan. I don't really have anything for them. Raymond Bailey is in this. We've seen him before recently,
What do we see him in?
last season. He plays Dr. Townsend in this movie, but he's a big character actor that played Mr. Drysdale on the
Oh,
Beverly
yes.
Hillbillies.
Yep.
He used to
Yep.
take his toupee off, and then he looks like a totally different person. But
Hmm.
he was the doctor in The Incredible Shrinking Man last year.
Yep.
So Raymond Bailey, like I said, another television actor. Bert Harlan played Barney Russell. He's another TV face that you would recognize. And Steve
Hmm.
Darrell played Andy. I mentioned that there's lots of familiar faces, and I teased earlier that Clint Eastwood is uncredited as a jet squadron leader in this movie. So you can see
Hmm.
Clint Eastwood. And even the spider from this movie is the same spider from The Incredible Shrinking Man.
Yep.
So we have a repeated cast member there, if you
Yeah.
don't mind me
Well
saying
said.
so.
Yes, that's good. I remember us talking about that when we did Shrinking Man. We talked about the same spider as Tarantula. And
Yeah.
Jack Arnold is obviously really good at filming giant spiders. So that
Yes.
works
And obviously,
well.
Arnold had a relationship with Eastwood because his first movie with Arnold, I don't know if it was his first movie altogether, was Revenge of the Creature, which is another Jack Arnold movie. So Clint
Mhm.
knew him prior to this movie, and that's why he's in here as well.
Well, and also, like you said, Clint Eastwood had ties to Mara Corday because she did
Hmm.
several of his films and everything else. She also, you neglected to mention, she was Playmate. She was a Playboy Playmate
Oh, I
sometime
didn't even
around
see
here.
that.
Yeah, I think it was in, hold on to my notes. I can tell you real quick.
Imagine that the gay guy overlooks that.
She, she was Miss October in 1958. So
Oh,
three
okay.
years after this movie,
Did
she's
you
in
Google
Playboy.
pictures?
I would never do that, Tim. I
Oh,
would never.
yeah,
But
right.
she was. she came from a pinup background. When she's one of those typical stories of the girl who comes from the Midwest. I mean, well, she was born in Santa Monica, so not Midwest, but goes to Los Angeles to be a star. She starts out being a showgirl and a pinup girl and modeling, and then gets into the movies.
B
And
movies.
that's her story. B movies, true, yes.
Yeah.
I don't, but she did go on to do some other science fiction. I mean, she did Black Scorpion, I think
Oh,
was
yeah.
one
I
of
did have
hers.
that in my notes. I forgot about that because I watched that not too long
Um,
ago.
and again, of course, lots of westerns because this was the era of westerns too.
Hmm.
So both she and John Agar did a lot of westerns. So
As far
um,
as awards, when we get to these older movies, that are not that many. However, this won the Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Award for Best DVD Commentary in 2019. So
ooh,
I was like, that's recent. I want to find that, but it's not on YouTube, and I don't. I didn't have time to buy the DVD, nor that I think I would. But I was curious to listen to this commentary that won an award.
would it be with Jack Arnold, you think?
Not this
Or
late. He's probably
who?
dead.
I would assume. So who's doing this incredible commentary then?
I don't
I
know.
don't, that would be interesting, I
Yeah,
think.
it specifically said in 20. I mean, the award was awarded in 2019. I'm assuming it was a re-release where like a TCM commentator did something,
Oh,
like from
okay.
Turner Classic Movies or something, because they do that sometimes. But I don't think Jack Arnold's alive. I haven't looked, but I mean, he would. I don't think he would be alive now. And then it was not on the 1001 movies you must see before you die list. But then again, not many big monster movies are that I can recall. Just probably
No,
King Kong.
and if it came down to it between like them and this movie and Deadly Mantis, maybe, I mean, you would definitely take them, I think,
Them.
first.
Hmm.
Just because of the radioactive and the commentary at the end. It's very much, I mean, we talked about it in our episode, but it's very much like the thing from another planet.
Well, and also the fact that Stuart Whitman and whatever that other guy's name was always in army gear with every kind of weapon you
Yeah,
can imagine killing those ants.
yeah, kill them ants, baby. We can fight back those ants. Yeah, again, the problem with this one, there's a definite climax and denouement to that story. There's not to this. I mean, call up the jets, let's napalm it, we're done. Goodbye.
And I actually love that. That was one of my favorite things because,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
because in most of these monster movies, it's not easily killed. It's, Godzilla, you can't take him out. The ants took a long time because there were so many of them. The
Hmm.
mantis was huge and deadly. And this one, though, it's just an overgrown spider. It's not that intelligent. They just bring fighter jets in and firebomb that thing and set it on fire and end a movie. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious that we didn't even get a last cheesy line or something. No
Yeah.
denouement, no
It was
final.
just the skeletal thing of
It was
burning.
just, let's watch that thing burn
Yeah.
and stand here in the middle of the road. Yeah, that works for us.
I
Yeah.
don't think I have
Um,
a picture of it. I don't.
I have some funny watch notes that might be interesting. I've got same town as Monolith Monsters. So, we mentioned that. This is some really good flirtatious dialogue. I did like their dialogue, the between Igar and her. I thought that was really
Mhm.
good. I've got, this movie suffers from that bad screenplay of everybody in a small town always refers to each other by their first name all the time. So it's like, hi, Lou. Hi, Andy. Hi, Lou. Hi, Bob. Hi, Lou. Hey, Lou, when are you going to do that? I don't know, Andy.
And nobody talks like that. Yeah.
Everybody's saying their first names all the time. Hey, Bob, I'm going out to Dr. Beamer's place. Okay,
Yeah.
Andy. Oh, I've got suffers from big monster trope of the bigger it is, the slower it moves. Because they're filming this. I mean, a tarantula, even a normal palm-sized tarantula, can move really freaking fast. But this one is just like, for the dread and the suspense, it's climbing over the mountain and it's walking down the road. I mean, it would be booking. if it was
But
that
it
big.
may have, I mean, would it have been hard to stimulate the spider to go fast? Maybe.
Well, I
Like,
think you would lose the
what?
suspense factor if it could. I mean, watch YouTubes of a tarantula attacking something. They move
Right. Well,
fast.
that's what I mean. I'm saying I know he was using it to be suspenseful coming over the mountain, but if they wanted a shot of it being fast, would it have been hard to create that? I mean, like, how would you get a spider to go fast?
Well, I mean, the same way he did with Incredible Shrinking. Remember when it's running across the concrete toward
Oh,
him?
yeah. You know
It's
what? You're
moving
right. It is
fast.
running really fast.
And they used the I guess the spider tier, the animal trainer, the whatever he was using. They used bursts of air to motivate it, to
You're
little
right.
shots
You're right. I
of
remember
air.
that now, but that was in that movie.
You made fun of it. Remember in Deadly Madness because it would go.
Yeah. And it had like
It
a
was
Godzilla
just
cry.
so
Yeah.
slow moving, and they wouldn't be. It would go and it would grab you and eat you, and you'd be done
Hmm.
because they're fast. But
Hmm.
you go with the trope of because they're bigger, it's more pressure on them, more atmospheric pressure. They have to move slower. Whatever, make
They
that up.
can't breathe.
Yeah, can't breathe. Well, they wouldn't be able to breathe anyway. But I've also got, I don't know what this strange white substance is, so let me taste it. What
Oh,
scientist
that
would do that? That
That
was,
that was something I was going to bring up because last season I went off on that movie The Stuff, saying you
yep,
don't just touch something on the ground and eat it, and yet that guy did it. He
yeah,
reached down, licked his finger. I'm like, what the fuck? And it
yeah.
ended up being tarantula venom. Why didn't he get
Yes,
sick?
I know. I'm the same thing I've got in my notes. I said, this isn't a kilo of Coke you're trying to check out, Dano. This
No.
is, what are you doing?
Yeah, nobody does
Uh,
that. And also, why would there be pools of venom? I mean, I thought maybe they would
right.
find a web or something else, I mean, or that
Well,
maybe it had
most,
something to do with the experiment that the guy was doing. But why would he just leave puddles of venom?
well, I mean, again, for arachnophobes, maybe that's scarier, but
Yeah,
scientifically makes no sense.
no,
Also arachnids don't eat the flesh off of something. They desiccate the body. So it would
right.
be actually be leaving it like a
A
husk,
husk.
like a mummy looking thing
Yeah, I've done a lot
instead
of
of
research
bones.
on this
Yeah.
because of a book I was working on at one time. They kind
And
of like dissolve you from inside out and leave a
right.
husk. Yeah,
And
and they
unless he
suck you out.
had just over an abundance of venom, I don't think it would be dripping out like that,
Yeah,
sort of out
they
of the
should
body.
remake this movie and do it that way
There's been enough spider movies, especially
with a
big ones. We don't
husk
need
of a
any more
horse.
bigger. Yeah, and the
You
same
know,
thing with a human body. Imagine what that would look like,
yeah, you
Cronenberg.
touch it
Yeah.
and it just shatters into many
Yeah, it
pieces.
just
Yeah.
crumbles. Yeah. I've got okay, sit back, everybody. It's time for a tarantula backstory. When the scientist shows him all the videos of this is what tarantulas do. They
Hmm.
I thought that was good. I've got, gosh darn, we're really lucky that tarantula sticks to the road because
Yeah.
she's going just right down the road, right into town.
I have pictures of that. Actually, there's one there.
I mean, but I do like it's like I said at the beginning. I think what Arnold was trying to do was create that dread that he's so good at, that he was really, especially in like Creature from the Black Lagoon. The way we are so on edge, like when will it attack next? When will it come back? Where is it? And we're not even seeing it. When we see it, it's scary and it's slow moving, but it's still terrifying. I think he was trying to recreate that, and he achieves it for most of the movie, but it kind of falls apart in that last act of it's coming to town. And I know he needed that threat for the end, but I just didn't feel it as much.
I was like,
That was just
don't they
me.
have helicopters? Why aren't they looking for it?
But yeah, because remembering them, they used helicopters to find the nests.
Yeah.
That was right. I hadn't thought of that, but that's true. They should have.
They eventually bring
Um,
in the fighter jets, but
yes, Yeah.
Most of my keys are just going to be big bug movies, but the one that I immediately go to is Rocky Horror Picture Show
Of course.
with the lyric Leo G. Carroll was over a barrel when Tarantula took to the hill.
Yeah, I mean, they even mentioned the title of the movie.
They do, and that song, for those of you out there that are unfamiliar with Rocky Horror, is called Science Fiction Double Feature. And I was trying to figure out the other day how many movies we have covered that are mentioned in that song, and I never really got around to finishing. But
we should look at those lyrics. That'd be fun.
we've covered Dana Andrews in Curse of the,
Curse of the Demon.
Curse of the Demon, which Dana Andrews said prunes gave him the runes or whatever. And Leo G. Carroll's over a barrel. And we've not done Jeanette Scott with Triffids. That's one that we need to do that's on our list. But there's several others that I think we've actually covered in there. We've done King Kong.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway.
I mean, it
that song's a huge key.
It says a lot about Richard O'Brien and his structure of lyrics and his homages to, which is what that whole movie was.
Right.
Was this whole homage to the 50s and the science fiction. So, yeah, totally agree with you. I've got, of course, Them, I think is one of the top keys for this. I've got, and you'll know because I didn't look it up, damn it, I just wrote the beginning but not the end. The witty banter, the flirtatious dialogue, it's a lot like, who was the guy in the 40s who had all the great, Billy Wilder? Is that?
Billy Wilder was he did Something Like It Hot. And
yeah, all that witty repartee and really good back and forth with actors.
Oh, I don't know if that was. He would have some of that, but you're thinking even further back, like in the 30s with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn.
Right,
probably.
Right. Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, all
His
of them.
Girl Friday and those kind of comedy slapstick, not necessarily slapstick, but fast talking comedy.
And the way there's a repartee between the characters. They know each other. They know their ins and outs and their funds and all that, because all the way through this movie, that dialogue is there. Even with the guy from the funeral parlor, the sheriff, everybody, they've got this nice repartee going on, which I thought was really good. I like the dialogue in this movie a lot.
I'm not sure who the directors back then would have been, though. I would have to look that up. 1930s comedies.
Yeah, I just put 30s witty dialogue and put a ... I didn't look it up. Let's see. I've got Frankenstein, because this is that parallel of you're trying to do something, you're creating a monster accidentally, and the monster turns against you. Which, although we just covered it, Bride of Frankenstein, but the monster doesn't really turn against the creator until the very end of each of those. If that makes sense. Yeah. What else? Do you have other ones?
No, not really. I'm trying now that you mentioned Frankenstein, now I'm thinking mad scientist movies like The Invisible Man and things like that.
Yeah. So, well, all that. My next one is scientific hubris. That whole, the scientist creates the tragedy because he's trying to think that man can do more than he's really can or responsible for.
Another one that immediately comes to mind is Food of the Gods, because it does have giant animals in it that look more like those that are in the cage of Dr. What's-His-Face.
And I've got a bunch of those, but the one before I jump onto those is War of the Worlds, just because of the way the structure goes, and we see the threat, then we get scared, then we have a whole section where we find out more about them and blah, blah, blah. And then the end is like the dynamite is like the equivalent of the atomic bomb. We're going to try it and see. In War of the Worlds, it doesn't work. In this one, it does. Bring in the napalm and let's nuke this bad boy.
Yeah.
So you said there's tons of spiders and giant spider movies, of course, that I think were definite keys from this particular movie. Not so much Incredible Shrinking Man, but yes, Incredible Shrinking Man. But
that's a Jack Arnold key anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But Eight-Legged Freaks, Giant Spider Invasion. There's another one called Big Ass Spiders. I've never even seen Big Ass Spiders, but I've heard
No,
it's
a
kind
lot
of
of those are going to be dumb.
a comedy spider one. But even some more recent ones that have, it has a giant spider at the end of it.
Actually,
That's
that's a
what
good one that I should have thought of. I didn't even think about that. But
I
yeah.
know. I couldn't believe you didn't think of that. I remember the movie Krull, I think. I couldn't, I needed to look it up. I should have done my research. I think Krull has a giant spider at the end of it, a crystal spider. And
Are you
it's
sure that's not? I was thinking that was Indiana Jones, but those were skulls.
yeah, no, I think it's Krull that has the crystal spider. I'm not certain, but one of them does have it's a clear crystal spider on a web and it chases them and stuff. Shelob in Return of the King is a giant spider. It's not as giant as this one gets, but it's big. And the two that have come out this past year, Spaceman, which I don't know about seeing because it has a giant spider that's talking to this astronaut, and it's an alien who's taken the form of a spider. And I don't know if I want to
I don't
watch
know
a
anything about
giant.
that.
It's Adam Sandler, and he's an
Oh, I do
astronaut.
know that. I didn't know there was a spider in it though.
Watch the trailer; it talks to
Okay.
him. But yeah, I don't know if I want to see a giant talking tarantula spider movie. And then that other one you saw, Sting. I'm not. No,
I
that
didn't see
looks.
Sting. I saw
Oh,
Infested, the
oh, in
French
Fantasy.
movie.
Yeah, no, that one
But they're
too.
not that big. That's just like a takeover movie of small spiders.
What, Infested?
Yeah. I mean, they're the size of your hand maybe, but they're not that big.
I mean, I'm more scared of once it gets above a dog size, that's when I start getting scared until it gets so big and then I'm not scared anymore. So giant, I guess I'm not scared, but when it can puncture your chest, I'm scared. Unless, because infestation movies don't really bother me that much if it's like a ton of spiders or cockroaches or whatever, unless they're like in the mist when their webs are acid or whatever. I don't like that whole spider
That's actually another good
trope.
Stephen King key with
Oh, the
big
mist?
spiders. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and
Um,
well, isn't there a big, large-legged creature in that? I don't know if it's a spider, but
no,
whatever that.
that's like really tall and up in the
Oh, okay,
clouds. But
okay.
yeah, but the spiders are still really big. They're like bigger than chihuahuas. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, that whole, I can handle them in my hands. I can handle 10 of them crawling on me, but if it gets
Oh,
bigger than a chihuahua,
I
I
have
don't want it
two
around me.
I have two digressions to make. Yesterday I
Okay.
was listening to a podcast where they're talking about a new species of ant that's invading New York City, Manhattan.
Uh-oh.
And apparently they're these very aggressive ants that like fight other ants, and they've spread all over Manhattan, and they're as far now as like New Jersey or up north, and they said that there's a really big chance they could go to Maine and as far south as Georgia. And I was like, called Joan Collins, Empire of the Ants. And sure enough, the host mentioned Joan Collins like 3 seconds later. I was like right ahead of him.
Wow.
It was really funny. But the other thing I was going to mention is I looked up the lyrics of science fiction,
Hmm.
and it starts off with The Day the Earth Stood Still, which we've covered.
Hmm.
It mentions Flash Gordon, which we have not covered.
Hmm.
It says Claude Rains in The Invisible Man, which we have covered, and Fay Ray from King Kong, which we have covered.
Hmm.
Then It Came from Outer Space, we have not done. Dr. X, we have not done. Forbidden Planet, we have done. That's
Hmm.
all from the chorus. Then you have the second verse, which is Leo G. Carroll in this movie, Jeanette Scott, which we have not done in the Triffids movie, Dana Andrews, which I mentioned we have done, and When Worlds Collide, which we have not done. So you need to go to these lyrics and pick out movies for next season.
I should. I should. So we can then do just a Rocky Horror episode and
Right.
just, yeah.
We'll do a double feature to do them all or something. I don't know.
Well,
That's
When
crazy.
Worlds Collide has always been on my list. I love that
Okay.
movie. I think it's a good movie. But
Well, I think
it
Triffids has too.
Yeah, Triffids has always been up on the list. It Came from Outer Space, not so much, but
Okay.
yeah.
Dr. X is an older movie. I think they remade it actually from a silent film or a 30s movie.
That's Ray Milland.
That's the remake. I think there's one before him.
Oh, okay.
Unless
I
you're
might not be
thinking of
familiar
Dr.
with that one.
Orlock, because there's a Dr. Orlock too.
No, this
Okay.
is X because he's radioactive.
Oh,
So
no,
he's
no.
been-
I watched that the other day. That's Roger Corman. No,
X?
that's called X, the man with X-ray eyes. That's not Dr. X. Dr.
Oh,
X
okay.
is a specific like 30s movie that I think got remade.
I may have to look into that then.
It's
I
got
don't know
sequels
for that.
too, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, look into
Dr.
it.
X and the Bikini Bombs. No.
Probably, but no. Anyway.
But
Sorry, I digressed.
in summation, I really like this movie, and I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad that you had not seen it before. We always like to get those with each of us where you haven't seen it and you're like next week. I have not seen next week's, so that would be an
Okay.
interesting
Yeah,
one.
and I was surprised by this one because it not only was I surprised, well, I was just surprised in multiple ways because I couldn't remember if I'd seen it or not. And so I was like, surely I have. And I sit down and watch it. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen this.
And
So,
nothing says Christmas like a giant spider. I mean, come
nothing.
on.
Nothing at all. I cannot
No.
think of a better Christmas movie. I'm serious. You think I'm joking, but I'm serious. Any of these Universal horror movies are great for me.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's what we have for you today. I think you can take by our comments that David and I are fans of this movie, 1955's Tarantula, starring Leo G. Carroll, over a barrel.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to know what you think. Let us know down in the comments or reach out to us via email or via YouTube comments or you can always hop over to Patreon and see what's going on over there. We've got lots of free stuff as well as some subscription tiers if you're interested in something like an old television show like The X-Files or even older Star Trek. We've got shows over there with that. And damn, David, only a few weeks until of shopping left until Christmas.
Of the year. Yeah.
Yeah, but we got one more for you before we're going to take a small break over the holidays. So tune in for our Universal feature next week.
All right. We'll see you then.
All righty. Bye.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.